All right. Good evening and welcome, everyone, to the Pachesky Conservation Center for the second iteration of our fall speaker series. I'm Jonathan Hayden. I'm the Executive Director of the New Mexico Land Conservancy, and we here at the Conservancy do a lot of thinking about landscape scale conservation and the different and diverse ecoregions of New Mexico. We're blessed to have a wide variety of them. I think we have 8 in total, from the Madrean Archipelago and the Sky Islands region of the Boot Heel, all the way up to the tablelands and shortgrass prairies up in the northeastern part of the state. We love them all equally, of course, and we love them so much we put an ecoregion map in this year's edition of our annual report, which we have on the table over there, which kind of shows just how diverse the state we are lucky enough to live and work in. But our guest tonight is an expert on one of those, which is probably one of the most fragile ecoregions in the state and one of the most beloved. So Cristina Salvador discovered her passion for ecology while studying tropical coastal forests of Ecuador, her parents' native country. She earned a BS in biology from Duke University and an MS from Stanford University, focused in plant ecology and evolution. Her work at public gardens, universities, and government agencies has assisted in the understanding and conservation of endemic plants from Hawaii, California, Panama, and New Mexico. In 2010, Cristina joined the Santa Fe Botanic Garden to help establish its new botanic garden. Um, as the founding director of conservation, she returned to her roots in biodiversity conservation, focusing on ex situ collections management, habitat restoration, and initiatives to protect rare and threatened species. She also oversees the garden's library, their herbarium collections, and she serves on the boards of the Queen Bee Music Association, where she's also a ukulele student, apparently, the Women's Board of the Museum of New Mexico, and the American Public Gardens Association. So please join me in welcoming Cristina Salvador.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. I'm just going to get myself set up here. Okay. Yeah, just a few notes. So I really appreciate that introduction. I am actually not an expert, you would say, in the Alpine. I am just at kind of the beginning point of my Alpine studies. But yeah, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm excited to share with you a little bit about where I work at the Santa Fe Botanical Garden, some of the projects that I've become involved with this past couple of years, and of course, the alpine habitat and the flora. So this view might look familiar to some of you. Wasn't this a great sight on Monday afternoon? This was the first sign of snow that I had seen in a long time, and you can see it at the top of the peaks there in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains at about 12,000 feet. And what these peaks might evoke in you, and definitely evoke in me, is that they fascinate me. I am so excited to be up there exploring. They might bring you a lot of joy at the upcoming ski season. And there's also just like a captivating, sort of daunting at times, intimidating, and even a sacred sort of sense about these mountain peaks. And as Jonathan said, they're very fragile. So my aim tonight is to show you an aspect of them that you might not always get to see and appreciate. But first, I'm just going to quickly cover just a little bit about my background. As Jonathan said, I have worked in various ecosystems and for other gardens and universities, the government. And for the past 15 plus years, I've had the privilege to be at Santa Fe Botanical Garden. And for the past year and a half, I'm in this new role as Director of Science and Conservation. And I am a department of one, but I am very grateful to have one intern seen here, Ben, who's going to be a graduate of University of Colorado in just a few weeks. He's graduating early. And contrary to the clothing that we're wearing, he's my summer intern. So you couldn't really tell from that picture. And also it was, said in the beginning of my introduction that my family is from Ecuador. And really that experience for me was life-changing because it was my first field experience. And I was in these forests on the coastal parts of Ecuador, and I was working with a team of conservationists and scientists, but also private land owners. And we were attempting to study different pieces of this untouched forest to be put together into a corridor and be protected for different purposes, for the animal life, for the plants that existed there. And so it's really special to be here and presenting to you and for this organization that kind of works in a similar vein. So thank you so much for the work that you guys do. I'm going to be covering a little bit about Santa Fe Botanical Garden for those of you that might not know much about it and might not think of us as a conservation organization. I will be covering a few of the basics about the Alpine biome. And then I will admit that it has been a learning curve for me this past year. So I will try to, do my best to explain what I've learned, but I do have flashcards on my desk of alpine plants with the names on the back just to keep me learning. I will also be talking a lot about the history and the science and the conservation work that we are a part of that's making a really impact on the alpine ecosystems. But I want to start just briefly with Santa Fe Botanical Garden. Is there anybody here by a show of a hand who has not been to Santa Fe Botanical Garden? No? Okay, so for the online audience, I just wanted to give a little guidance that we are here in Santa Fe. We're on the southeast side of the town, only 1.5 miles from the center plaza. And we are at a location called Museum Hill. And so when you are on Old Santa Fe Trail, you might see this beautiful sculpture depicting the settlers first arriving to Santa Fe, and that is where you do turn right. And that takes you to Museum Hill, and that's where you will find 4 other fabulous museums, and we are a destination for education, science, art, and just such a resource and a treasure here in Santa Fe. We are on 19 acres, and we are leasing our land partially from the state of New Mexico and the city of Santa Fe. The mission of Santa Fe Botanical Garden is here, and it's rooted in education and science, conservation, community service, presentation of the arts, and sustainability. I know that's a mouthful. But I really wanted to point out that we have started from the ground up not very long ago. And what grows there today is changing always, and there's something new to learn and be inspired by. So I encourage you to come, and I hope that I took both of those pictures, and it's just been such a wild ride to be there. I also want to acknowledge that the land we are on has been inhabited for over 1,000 years, and we are really at a crossroads of settlers and cultures for many hundreds of years. And we honor this heritage through our plant collections, our programs, and our events. And ultimately, we are a collection like a museum. We feature diverse plants for our climate, and we are more than just a beautiful display. We are teaching hands-on horticulture. We are leading educational tours. We're giving classes, and we're inviting all ages of our community to come and connect with nature. Our climate is very different, and you have a few facts and figures here to show kind of what I'm talking about. We're high elevation. We're very low precipitation. We're in a zone of a climate that is very hard for plants to thrive in. And so to learn more about these plants, we have them labeled throughout the garden, and we also have an online resource, which is a very robust plant database that allows you to search for the plants and learn a lot more about how to grow and care for them. So I just put that's going to be on our website, and please check it out. And we just do not stop. So for the past 20 years, we have been growing and expanding, and you can see the just cadence of this expansion. And we are currently working on a really exciting project for a children's discovery garden that will continue into next year. We are preparing the site and putting in pathways even this week. So a few key facts about who we are. We are a nonprofit. We are a very small but mighty team. How many people here are members? That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And if you're not a member, it's okay. I just wanted to, thank the people here that are members. You really are the people who are sustaining us and helping us. We do not receive any funding for operations from any level of government. And that's a very important thing to know about us, because a lot of people assume that we're up there on Museum Hill and we're a state entity. And that is not true, which is why I strongly encourage you to come to La Luz de las Noches. I have to make a final plug. I promise. We're about to go right into the science. But the plants look fabulous lit up at night. And I will say the connection to Alpine is you can wear all of your extreme weather gear, like all those coats and boots and hats and gloves. This is the place to wear it to, and you will be great, because it is cold temperatures. If it snows, it's beautiful. All right, so let's just make that hard switch over to science and conservation, dive in. So this is a new part of our mission, but we are already actively doing things to restore habitat, such as our pinyon juniper woodland. And we are also doing such public outreach programs such as this. And so thank you to Jonathan Hayden for being our very first speaker series in our science and conservation lecture series. And so programs like that, getting into field work, we're really going to get more in depth in this as I continue to talk. But I just wanted to say that we're putting out a multi-pronged program, and it's been just an exciting new aspect of the garden and my own work. And why is this so important? Because I use the same map as Jonathan about ecoregions. And these are, hold on, let me just find my place back here. The convergence of a lot of major biomes, as he said. We have just such extreme elevation gradients from under 3,000 feet to over 13,000. We are supporting so many different types of vegetation, the geology, the soils. This is all what's driving all of these amazing species of plants and animals and birds. We rank, in the top in the country. And at the same time, these are the same organisms that are being threatened. And there's many threats in New Mexico. And I think we know what those are. They're very common. I will say one that's been extremely devastating lately and that's directly affecting my work is wildfire. And that can definitely be connected as well to climate change. So I just wanted to have you look over this and say that if you aren't aware of Natural Heritage New Mexico, it's an amazing organization here that is pulling together all of the latest information and putting it into a database. And that database is then going into a national database called NatureServe. So there's websites for all of this. But what that does is that helps us set our priorities. And you can see on the map of important plant areas of New Mexico. And there's a little red star up by Santa Fe, and we're surrounded by the darkest color. And that's because our biodiversity is extremely high up here. And so that sets the stage for the Alpine, because where we are positioned, we are at the southern end of the Rocky Mountains. So this is where the Alpine does exist from here on up, a part of the Rocky Mountain Alpine ecosystems. So somebody had asked or mentioned, what's that elevation? We're talking about above 11,000, and in some parts of the state above 11,500 feet. Very rocky and rugged, very low soils. Like it's very thin. It's very windy. It's cold temperatures, extremely freezing most of the time. The precipitation that it does get falls mostly as snow, and that's a good thing because we need that snowpack to provide water. And in fact, the Alpine does provide fresh water for human populations. Over 50% of human populations depend on that kind of like system of fresh water flowing down from mountains. But what it means is that the growing season for the plants up there only have 8 to 10 weeks. So it's a very brief period, and a lot has to happen for them to exist. The sunshine is very intense. The UV is one of the harsh things for them. But the plants of this region have evolved to survive such an environment. And let me get here. So I'm just showing a little bit of the terrain and what it looks like when you're up there. And that's one of the researchers that I will be talking about the project that we worked on. He's very small compared to those rocks. And then here's a picture showing some of the vegetation. So the common methods that plants use to adapt to this harsh climate are mat-forming, dwarf, ground-hugging growth to escape that high wind. They're also evolving fine hairs to reduce evaporation and trap heat. And it's like a little miniature fur coat on the leaves, and it can just be beautiful. Light colored foliage to reflect the intense sunlight, and then a very long and thick taproot to utilize the moisture that might be deeper below the ground. That taproot is also storing carbohydrates throughout the winter. And then they also have leaves that can be like succulents to store water for long periods. These plants can grow at lower elevations, but the competition with all the other plant life that can exist up where they grow is so much more, how do you say, like not fierce, but like there is just a higher level of competition. So these plants have optimized and evolved traits to exist up there, and that's where they can be. But we could take these plants lower and grow them in, our gardens or in places like that. But and most of them would do fine. There are some that are obligates and absolutely need to live in the alpine environment. And I'll give you a few examples. So some of the threats that are listed here include climate change, desertification, which has been shown in some recent studies. And what's happening is when these warmer temperatures are coming, it's actually pushing the level of the alpine to go higher. And so everything that exists at that high level really has nowhere to go. And I want to point out next, and then the other threats can be even hiking and skiing. So it's really important that when you're up in an environment like that, you tread lightly, you leave no trace, and you try to stay on trails, and you try not to trample these plants. So globally, the alpine environment is actually just under 3% of the land area in the world. And you'll see that goes all the way from the poles to the equator. So it's quite a wide range. And then I wanted to zoom in though and look at the Rocky Mountains where we are. And so on the map on the left, there's a line that goes down the 2,000 miles of the Rocky Mountains. And it's the Continental Divide, and that's where it marks. And then on the graph on the right, what it's showing you is like a cross section of that. And you'll see at the very high northern latitudes, the alpine environments can exist at much lower elevations. So let's say you're in BC or you're in Alaska, the alpine environment can just be like kind of within just a couple like 100 feet of like when you like emerge off the ocean. Like it's a very low area. Tree line is much, much lower. But over here, since we're so much farther south, you can see that the alpine environment, you have to go up much higher in elevation before you can find it. And I did mark that Wheeler Peak is at the very end of the southern range, and it is the last peak before it just completely drops off. And then I will say though, our Sangre de Cristo Mountains do have a little bit. It's not reflected in this graph here. But I want to focus on Wheeler Peak because this was the site for some of our work this past summer. One great thing though about what botanical gardens are trying to do is they've come up with a strategy, and it has a long name, North American Botanical Garden Strategy for Alpine Plant Conservation. And it's really grounded in two other strategies, which is a global strategy for plant conservation and then the North American strategy. And these resources are amazing because their objectives that are listed here are doing things such as compiling a worldwide list of alpine plants. Because if we don't know what plants exist in the alpine, we don't know then how to care for them. And then it's also creating a very modern, sophisticated digital map to show all the areas. So I don't have any sort of, I'm not going to be presenting the map here tonight, but I do have the website on this slide, and I would encourage you to go check it out. In situ and ex situ conservation means simply that we are working on projects to protect alpine plants in their habitats and also away from their wild habitats. So growing plants in the garden would be an example of ex situ conservation. Collecting seeds and putting them into seed banks would also be an ex situ conservation project. And so I will talk a little further about that. And then the other 2 points we'll cover as well. And so Where it started for us is here. Um, this structure that you see in this picture, I took this picture about 2 years ago down at the Randall Davy Audubon. And it's a it's going to be a story about historical collections. And I received a phone call and I was told that there was a really incredible historical collection inside this building. And so the woman here is Renee Galliano Pop. And she said I really had to come out and check it out, and that it was going to be something, quite that I hadn't seen before. And so I go in there, and what I see are 3 large cabinets full of specimens of plants that had been collected for over 5 decades and were so well cataloged and so well preserved and organized. And I immediately was just like, this is kind of amazing. But like, what plants are these and where did they come from and who did this? And there was no way to find out. There was no sort of publication about them. There was no website I could go to. It was just there. And as you can see, Renee's still in her coat. It was a very cold building. This was in November. There's no internet. So I kind of felt like, well, what could happen here? And then if you aren't aware of what an herbarium is, it's a curated collection of preserved plant specimens. And each specimen includes the plant itself, which is depicted on the left, and then information about where and when it was collected, who collected it, and the notes on the habitat, the appearance, and the other ecological details. This is a permanent record for research, conservation, and education, and it can tell you so much about the past and what used to grow there. And this collection, as you can see the name here, R.S. Peterson, it was from Roger Peterson, and it was him collecting the majority of the specimens in that cabinet. And I also included a couple photographs that I found on iNaturalist, which is a community science app where you can go and document plants that you see with photographs, and it will record the same location. So basically kind of similar to an herbarium specimen, but just using a photograph. And that's excellent information. But these preserved plant specimens are just so incredibly rich with information. And you can see here, you can see like the fine root details and the color of the leaves. And so I brought a few specimens here if you would like to take a look at them after the talk. And if you have any questions, please ask me. That I think stand out because like this specimen was collected from an Alpine forb meadow. So that really kind of got me going and thinking, wait a second, Roger was collecting all of these plants in the Alpine 40 years ago. Like there has to have been changes. And what plants did he collect? And so I was very curious. So, I mean, it didn't take much. That is not me hauling off. But I had a few heart attacks watching the cabinets like go down the hill and get carried away. But we were determined to make this happen because we knew that these specimens needed to get into the hands of science. And you can see here in the boxes as we were packing them, we had to actually put them on wooden flats because that building occasionally would get flooded. So from the moment I took them out of the cabinets, I felt like I had to move as quickly as possible to get them into a safer location. We also have to go through a process of decontamination. So we do a deep freeze. We actually do a negative 40 degrees Celsius freeze on all the specimens to make sure that they are free of any insects and any possible like fungal spores. And so we treat these exactly like scientific specimens. And so here we are today. We are brought up to the modern age. And there is Roger Peterson in the herbarium that we have set up. And there's Renee Galliano using a computer, and she's actually entering that label data into a database called SciNet. And from SciNet, you can take your data and then upload it into a global database. And I included the name there, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And this is used worldwide to understand the patterns of plants and where they grow. And it's absolutely valuable to science and research. There's probably thousands of papers that are coming out every year using data that's in SciNet. So we believe strongly that this is like critical to advancing science. And I will say that UNM's herbarium, which is the largest in the state, has been absolutely pivotal in getting us set up and providing us expertise and giving us advice and kind of walking us through this process. But there's been a lot of helpful people. So the collection as of last week, I just want to like kind of brag a little because now we know more about it. 85% of it, we thought at first 95%, but it's showing up to be about 85%. We are very close to finishing the full for all the specimens. 178 have been georeferenced, but that's a very low percentage. And so that's a step that we're going to need to take in the future. We have quite a few families and genera, an amazing amount of species, and then our total taxa. So I just say that I am so proud of Renee and what she has accomplished, and we are going to be shortly celebrating her hard work. So this is a contribution that I think will be very valuable for many, many years. And what we're able to do is, now that we have a good assessment of the plants that are there, we're starting to make some comparisons. We're starting to look closer at the details. And one that even jumps out to me is 2 collections that Roger made at 2 different elevations. So on your left, he collected that one below alpine level, and on your right is the alpine level plant. And just remember what I told you about how plants adapt to the alpine. It's so obvious. Like that plant has, even though it's the same species, has completely become a dwarf and has completely like gotten smaller leaves. And this is a plant that then can better exist in that habitat. And so just to see what it looks like out in the wild at 10,000 feet, I drew another comparison photo from iNaturalist. So it's just so fascinating. So we did write up a few of our findings initially earlier this year in the Native Plant Society's newsletter, which I brought a copy of, but you can find it online. And we found that this herbarium has first records of alpine species that had never been known before. Yeah. And there were collection trips that Roger made in 79 and 82 on a huge piece of private land. And it's just outstanding that he had that access and that knowledge. And when I asked him about it, I was like, how did you know? And he was like, it just seemed interesting to me. And I think he's intrepid. He's very intrepid. And he's 94 years old right now. Let me just say. So I'm very just grateful to be in his presence. He also has collected a rare plant of New Mexico that's endemic, meaning it is native to New Mexico and restricted to New Mexico. And that's the Potentilla Sierra Blanca. And that is down on Sierra Blanca Mountain, which is actually on Mescalero Apache land, but it does also exist in the little mountain next to it on US Forest Service called Lookout Mountain. And so that is the farthest south reaches of alpine habitat in New Mexico. And so just keep that plant in mind because I will come back to it in a little bit. One last detail, along with this amazing herbarium are a huge book collection that Roger donated. And so all of these books are on my desk right now. You can't have them, but I will be checking them back to the library. They're due in a week. And you can go to this website and you can look them up. And if you are a member of Santa Fe Botanical Garden, please check out books. They are amazing. I have just really enjoyed diving into the alpine plants. Okay, so inside one of the books, I stole the title from this book, I confess, okay? Land Above the Trees is not something I made up, but it is a fabulous book. And I open the book, and of course I see Roger Peterson's name at the top, and then I see something else. He makes notes inside the book and he's just circling and question marking all of these parts. And I don't blame him. These are just white blobs on a kind of a rough, map. And so I could understand his confusion because when you look at like, okay, well, really, is there alpine there? He wanted to know more. And so did we. So I joined a team of 7 other people. One of them is not featured here. And we were 5 organizations. So let me see if I can get this. Santa Fe Botanical Garden, Albuquerque Biopark, UNM Herbarium, Betty Ford Alpine Garden from Vail, Colorado, and Cornell University. And that's a recent one because Hannah Marks, the researcher, was the director of the UNM herbarium, and she has recently taken the position as director of the Cornell herbarium. But she's still really involved in Alpine. She actually has an amazing project called the 50 Peaks Project. So if you really want to know more, I would definitely say check her out. And I talk about her work here. So here's our team, and we are going to Wheeler Peak. And you might think, Wheeler Peak, like, why would you study that? I mean, it's the highest point in New Mexico. Everybody's been there. How many people have been there? Yeah, it's great. So I had tried to go there before, and I couldn't make it there because the weather was so bad. But what's not really known is that sure, you can make it to Wheeler Peak, but we were able to make observations and collections on Wheeler Peak at an earlier time, studying the plants in late June. And I said there was like that 8 to 10 weeks. Most people are going in July. Like a lot of the observations that have been made botanically, we're kind of in this peak flowering peak season. We caught the early part, like stuff that like maybe isn't evident in July. So that's like one significant thing about the timing of this trip. Also, we were able to, the methods that this trip used are so comprehensive that we were able to find a lot of records that were only one or two other record in the whole state. So the methodology of this trip was extremely thorough. And so I want to take you on, give you just a little glimpse of how great it is to go to the Alpine. And so to start off, to get to the site is very challenging. We have to have permits. We have to be studying the weather. We have extreme logistic planning. We have to acclimatize to the altitude. So we camped at 12,000 feet. And we can't camp above tree line because that would be dangerous. And so we are at the point right below tree line just so we can access the Wheeler Peak. It's very resource intensive. And I would say that because of the amount of gear and the supplies that we needed to be up there for 6 days, we actually did need to contract horses. And everybody says, oh, you had horses. It was so easy. No, it was like the horse, we only so much weight can go on a horse. So we were also carrying a significant amount, each one of us. And you can't carry your water that you need for 6 days. So we were filtering water every single day. But just having a great time looking at the plants. That's Hannah right there on the bottom right. And she could get down to the ground faster with her camera and with a full pack than anyone I know. So once we were at the site, or actually getting to the site was the shortest 2-hour hike of my life. So it was just stunning, but it was a daily grind to get up those mountains. The weather there, though, you can see the skies are clear. There's not a cloud in sight. And so that was very reassuring. Because as I said earlier, storms frequently show up there. And we'll talk about that. We had to organize our team and we had to like sort of divide up all the tasks because we knew that the weather window was short. We know that these storms typically come in the afternoon. So as soon as you get up there, you get a little bit of a break and then you're immediately back at work. You're trying to decide where to go, and you're working usually with somebody else who maybe knows more plants than you, or at least I had to. And so there's a lot of communication going on. And as you can see, we have our hats on, we have our layers on. The weather can change at any moment, so you have to be very prepared. Here we are actually doing the collection work. And so we are putting the data into apps, which is amazing. So it's really efficient. And we are out there sampling plants by having to dig up one tiny sample and then immediately taking them as a collection. And then we're making a list of all the plants that we see, and we're spreading out across the entire summit. The work days started very early in the morning. So on the left, this was at 3:20 a.m. And that's us making breakfast for those that chose to make breakfast. And that's us hiking up close to like 4 a.m. And so this was kind of the schedule. And I will say you don't get the greatest sleep when you're sleeping at 12,000 feet. It's just a reality of the oxygen deprivation. And but when you work really hard, you get pretty tired and then you can't. And then this is us in the evening. So, and by evening, I mean like 2 or 3 p.m. when we have come down from the summit. And so we are pressing the plants. We're taking leaf samples and we're putting them into silica for DNA studies later. We're recording all the plant names. We're making logs. We are, cleaning all of our supplies, putting things in bins, and then we unwind for a little bit to make our dinner around a campfire. So this is kind of like the average day in the Alpine, and it's really lovely. We were very lucky in having extremely good weather. And so let's just take a little peek at 5 plants, just to satisfy those who really want to see the beautiful plants. And so this extremely adorable sweet flower rock jasmine. So I'm going to put the scientific name at the top because I love the botanical name. I'm going to put the common name in parentheses, and I'm going to put the plant family. So I hope that satisfies everybody here. And so this plant has a very sweet odor, and it likely functions to attract small alpine pollinators, which is extremely important in this harsh and windy high elevation environment. So the pollinators are scarce. So this is like one tactic for this plant. And as you can see in the photo on the right, the plant is so tiny. So that is about an inch at the end of the hori hori tool that we use to like extract some of these plants. The next is King's Crown. So you will see this below tree line, but you'll definitely, when you find it up in the Alpine, it's stunning. This plant is in the Crassulaceae family, and you can't tell exactly from these, but the leaves are kind of a succulent leaf. They hold water in them. And this leaf has a form of photosynthesis known as the Crassulacean acid metabolism. It's a CAM plant. And other plants that are CAM plants are like our desert plants. These would be our cactus and our succulents. So like our sedums are also in Crassulaceae. And so this means that the plant is photosynthesizing in the daytime, and it's actually exchanging its gases at night. So because it doesn't want to lose water during the day, it's going to close up its pores. It's going to hold off from releasing water, and which means that it can't exchange the carbon dioxide and the oxygen, but it's evolved a way of getting around that. And so it can put that carbon dioxide into an acid, and then it can kind of process its photosynthesis then later during the day, and the carbon dioxide at night. So the next plant on the left is the Polemonium viscosum, the sticky polemonium. And this is another plant that emits a strong odor. And some people say it smells skunk-like. Other people say it's a sweet smell. And that is because of glandular hairs and sticky secretions on the leaves and stems. And this, again, is thought to attract certain pollinators like flies. And so this one has bee pollinators and fly pollinators. And there's also some interesting research about how the floral development is adapting to the bee pollinators. So there's a very tight relationship there. And so let's just remember, climate change is affecting flowering times of plants. And so if it's warmer earlier and the plant is getting a signal to flower earlier, that doesn't always mean that the pollinators are going to be there at the same time. And so throwing off the timing of those two events can possibly also mean a threat to the plant's existence in the future for setting seeds, if that's a strategy that the plant does. Alpine plants, some of them are clonal, but a lot of them also do use seeds. And the Polemonium actually does have its seeds a little higher up so that it can catch in the wind. The Arctic Alpine forget-me-not, and it really, you don't forget it when you see it, it's just a stunning blue color, is an Alpine obligate, meaning it really does only want to grow in the Alpine. It's not going to exist below. So this is a plant that you want to be mindful of, is not, let me check my time here, is not going to exist easily at lower elevation, and is very critical to conservation. Let me make sure I'm doing okay. So finally, we have the silky phycelia, which is covered in fine hairs, and you'll see that it has sticking out these long neon purple exerted stamens, and that is for pollinator placement on bee bodies. So these are just interesting adaptations of these plants. So all of this sort of data and what we've just learned about what exists up there, Hannah is looking at in her research on biodiversity, and she's looking at the drivers of evolutionary processes. She's doing genetic work with other researchers, and I just wanted to point out her and Joseph Kleinkopf have some really interesting research coming out. And so if you're interested, they do have a website for the Marks Lab. And it's very good that this information is like kind of going directly into science. And so we are always thinking about maybe new peaks to study, and also why we would go back would be eventually in the fall when these plants set seed, we can go back and collect them. And so we targeted several species that were more isolated to New Mexico. And Emily and the researcher from Vail, Colorado, and her intern and I went back in September to collect some seeds. So here's a couple pictures of plants that we came back to in September. So this is what it looked like in June, and here it is in September. And then on the left is what the plant looked like in June, and then you can see the seeds in the middle here. And it was really great to have interns along with us on this trip to be able to train and to show sort of these methods and to expose them to this type of field work. And this is what we call capacity building. And I thought I'd just share really quickly a quote from my intern and about his experience. And I won't read the whole thing to you, but he does say this is an incredible introduction to the challenges and prevailing rewards of such comprehensive fieldwork. And he took this picture at sunrise, and he just said it was just an amazing experience. And so I'm so glad to be a part of that for him. Are we running low on time? Oh, we're good? Okay. And so I wanted to plug that our internship is accepting applications this month. And so if you know of any students or you, I was going to say, are part of a university, please share that we have a really interesting summer internship opportunity. And we do offer a housing stipend that goes along with it. And it is in conjunction with the state rare plants program. And there's opportunities to work on endangered plants in New Mexico and a lot of different other ecosystems. And so finally, the project that I want to just talk about last is going back to the Potentilla Sierra Blanca. So I am working with the Center for Plant Conservation and with the Forest Service, targeting these rare plants in New Mexico and collecting seeds from them that are in wildfire risk areas. And so I've marked on the map where that's my own little like reminder, like, okay, wrap it up. So this is in the Sierra Blanca Mountains down in southern New Mexico. And so I was very excited to return to a place that I had seen observations from Roger and to see the plants growing there and to collect the seeds myself. So the picture on the left is one that Roger took in 1986. And I'm just starting to tap into his slides collection. So the state archives of New Mexico have been very helpful in teaching me how to scan and digitize slides. And so that's a big project ahead that, you know, hopefully we can complement our specimens and attach pictures perhaps to these amazing plant records. And so here's my takeaways for you. And I wrote them all out so that you could really see what I think are, you know, kind of the big points about this past year is that these ecosystems are rare and they are at risk, and that our methods of documentation and understanding this type of biodiversity, we've used all these different methods and that it is foundational. We definitely are looking for partnerships. And so we are hoping that other people who are interested in the Alpine would want to engage with us and take part in these projects. We are planning for next year. And these efforts that we've been a part of are supporting an overall global strategy. It does say North American. We are working on actually a global strategy for alpine plant conservation. And so there is definitely more to do. I feel like in New Mexico, since it's possibly an environment and ecoregion that is potentially going to be threatened quite a bit in the future, it's important to do the work now. And so thank you so much to everyone that has been involved, from staff to interns, board, volunteers. There's just been a just incredible amount to make this possible. And you can see Roger and Renee on the left there. And thank you so much for this chance to talk. I put my email on the final slide. I put our social media. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. Hi.
You talked about what
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So how urgent is not only climate change, but future fires to get to these areas? Is that in your planning?
I mean, at least it is with the Center for Plant Conservation Project. And I would imagine as well with this Alpine focus. I mean, yes, I passed burned areas and flood prone areas to get to the site this summer. I mean, I was just kind of in shock the whole time. And so it probably has to be. It also depends greatly on who are the managers of those sites and understanding what their goals are. So if it's private, I mean, we live in a state that has quite a bit of public lands. And so we're fortunate to be able to work closely with those agencies. It could be different across different types of lands. So I think it will be a complex way of looking at, like, and just saying, like, you know, let's think about what everyone's sort of interests are in different regions, depending on that. Because, you know, the Rockies are a vast area, the Alpine, even though it's 3%, I mean, there's just so many different countries involved. But yeah, I personally do think that, especially in New Mexico, wildfire is a big factor, and that it will inevitably. Actually, while we were out there, I kept thinking, we have satellite phones with us, and I kept thinking, okay, there's lightning. Okay, there's, you know, like we're pretty much ready for anything to happen. So, yeah. Yeah.
So you spent quite a bit of time on Wheeler Peak.
Yeah.
So are you going to be studying some in other areas besides Wheeler? I mean, kind of somewhat intensively.
Yeah. So we are meeting in early December to go over the other areas that we're looking at. And I want to say at Wheeler, we actually did several peaks around Wheeler. So we did Wheeler over 2 days, and we did unnamed peaks just to the north of Wheeler as well. They're just a few feet, like 50 feet, 100 feet lower. So we were trying to capture multiple peaks at the same time. We are looking at areas that have either been undersurveyed, but there's probably good reasons for that. Either they're very hard to get to, or we're looking at areas that haven't been looked at in long periods of time. One of the researchers from the Betty Ford Alpine Garden in Vail, she's developing a heat map for New Mexico that will then really have areas stand out that have a variety of factors like that, understudied, and things like that. So I would say yes, but I don't know what those areas are right now. I have a couple in mind, but we're hoping to get together as a group and kind of like sort this out. And I'm very new to this, so I don't have as much field experience evaluating all these other areas. Yeah, but there's quite a few up north of here before you get to Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some are on private land. Yeah. And tribal land. And actually, I didn't mention this as well. One of the other sort of, you know, things that you have to take into account is that Taos Pueblo right there, that mountain is sacred to them. And we were planning our seed collecting trip, and then all of a sudden discovered the mountain was closed for a week because they were doing their annual cultural and traditional practices. And so we totally changed our plans at the last minute. And it makes sense to me that like a Native community has a very tight, you know, a significant relationship with these natural areas, and that we respect that. So I love that the Forest Service kind of worked hand in hand with them for that.
We do have a quick question from the online audience. What kind of threats do invasive species pose in the alpine ecoregions, especially in a time of fast-growing generalists and climate change?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't have any specific examples. I have heard about it coming up, and I would just say I would check out the Alpine strategy. And if not, I want to look into that question too. So tell the online person to shoot me an email, because we could like kind of get some information. I don't know exactly what's kind of the scene right now in terms of invasive species in the Alpine, but I imagine it's happening because new species are probably trying to like being kind of, they could probably get up there a variety of ways. Birds, yeah. Oh yeah, the goat heads, yeah. Yeah, but what's going for these plants that have been evolving there for, I don't know, millennia, is that their traits are, out competing. And I've been in other environments like serpentine grasslands where, if that environment is stable and intact, I realize climate change is happening, but like it can hold on because they can't, other plants just haven't yet evolved to that. But climate change is happening so rapidly that we don't know. So. Yeah.
A question about invasive species made me think of grazing. Do you have any thoughts on or observations from historical or current patterns of sheep grazing in the Alpine?
That's such a good question. Wow. No, I don't. I would love to look at that. I do know that obviously elk grazing is like a natural phenomenon. But I don't know about sheep grazing up there. Yeah, it would be a good thing to look at. Anything else? Really?
Right.
Oh, wait, I do want to say one thing. I had questions for you, and really it's just like, how do you get involved? And so I would just say community science is a really great area for everyone to, get involved in observing plants. So if you are a hiker or whatever, use iNaturalist, make observations, take photos with your phone and add them to community global data sets. That would just be wonderful. We use actually iNaturalist observations all the time. They also get added to GBIF. I think that was it was a question, but it was also like a plug. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for